Hello and welcome back to the Grapple Theory podcast. Thanks so much for joining us once again. Now, our guest today is a wrestler who is really making waves for themselves in the British scene, having just come back to England from America, where they spent the best part of over a decade living there, working, wrestling as well. They're now back here, back on the scene, really with their first time wrestling in the British scene, and they're really climbing that ladder now. They're very big in the gaming community, in the LGBTQ plus community, got a huge following online as well. We'll be talking to them about getting into wrestling and what they did, aside from that in terms of gaming, as well as the differences between the UK and US. A lot of them have to do with food. There's some very controversial food opinions coming up later in the episode, so look forward to them. Our guest today is Commander Stephanie Sterling. Commander, welcome aboard the Grapple Theory podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today. Why don't you tell us, first of all, a bit about your sort of background in wrestling and how you got into it?
Yeah, so I started in the United States. I was born in the UK. I moved to the States in 2008, and I've been there for about 14 years. I have a job on doing YouTube stuff, Twitch stuff, all that kind of stuff, like video games, media, criticism of the game industry and stuff like that. And the way I got into wrestling was sort of, it started as a gag. I'd used 30 seconds of Stone Cold Steve Austin's screaming CGI head from No Mercy, 2002, I think it was. And WWE copyright claims that and bars the video from being seen in most countries.
Sure.
So, righteously indignant at that insult, I commissioned a tailor to produce for me a purple spandex bodysuit, which I donned, painted my face silver, and called myself Stardust, a 100% original, copyrighted to Sterling Enterprises character, which WWE couldn't claim. So, of course, that was a parody of a little bit of Goldust, but primarily Cody Rhodes' Stardust character, because as much as everyone dumped on that gimmick, I loved Stardust.
Oh, I did as well. I thought
I adore the Stardust gimmick. So, yeah, I parodied that. And that was, just a little joke and a dig at WWE. But the character went over really well. And I thought it'd be a bit of a laugh if I contacted a local indie promotion and did a little crossover video with them, just have Stardust, do a little skit with their wrestlers.
Yeah.
So I contacted Pro Wrestling Ego. I was living in, of all places, I was living in Mississippi at the time.
Right.
I spent 12 ghastly years there. But I got in touch with Pro Wrestling Ego in Jackson, Mississippi, and said, pitched them this idea. They were really receptive, thought it was great, and then said, come along, we'll have you blow glitter in my face. This was Dynamite J. Andrews, who ran the company. Said, you blow glitter in my face and cut a promo. And I'm like, what? Cut a promo, on the show. And they went, yeah. And then they just started booking me. I just started turning up as Stardust as a manager, because obviously I had wrestling training. So I was a manager. I managed a guy called Ursa Major, sort of big bear-like brute. And then, we just started doing that for a while throughout that year. Eventually, they gave me a little bit of training. Not enough. I'll be the first to admit, not enough training, but they popped me in some tag matches, which, to their credit, it was very protected. I didn't do much. I had a bristling, heaving repertoire of a body slam and a running bulldog. And of course, the Eddie Guerrero, which is how
Obviously.
I won my first ever match, was the whole, the old bash the chair, feign injury kind of thing. So that was a lot of fun. But the more they booked me and the more I got over with the crowd, because I was despised in Mississippi, but got over really well as a heel. So the more they booked me and the more I gelled with the crowd and the more they really got into what we were doing, it stopped being a little, goof. It stopped being a joke. I loved wrestling, always, thought it would be fun to get into it, but never seriously entertained the idea.
Yeah.
But then it got serious. Essentially, my entire wrestling career is a joke that went too far.
I was going to say on that, is there a little, not necessarily imposter syndrome, but there's a little, like, you started out and you're doing this sort of like gimmick and you're slowly getting over, and as you're getting booked more, there's a little like, maybe like, oh God, what have I like got myself into here? Like, this is like happening.
Absolutely. I still have that imposter syndrome. Like I went from, a joke gimmick to a manager that sometimes wrestles to a wrestler. And I'm still like self-conscious about it and where I came from and how I got into the business. And, I spent so long drumming it into my head that, well, I'm never going to be a real wrestler. I'm never going to be where I want to be. So I've still, like, I did one of my videos for my day job on YouTube. I filmed at Pursuit Pro Wrestling where I train and made a joke about how I'm definitely a real wrestler, which is a tongue-in-cheek thing I used to do when I was a manager that sometimes wrestled to sort of play up the fact that I wasn't very good. And then I realized, like, I don't know where that came from because, like, I wrestle professionally now.
Yeah, you are now, yeah.
And, I'm regularly booked and have matches and do pretty well sort of money-wise from it. I had no reason to still do that, but imposter syndrome is very, very real and really weighs on me. But yeah, I dropped the Stardust thing because I'm like, I don't want to be a gimmick joke if this is going to turn into a serious thing. So we killed that character off. I got battered to death with a chair by someone. Came back as just Sterling because, pre-transition my name. And I still sometimes use it for business as Jim Sterling, or was Jim Sterling. And so I just went with Sterling for wrestling. Not particularly catchy, but, it worked.
Yeah.
After the being destroyed with a chair, I had to sort of bandaged face gimmick for a while, like Dark Man or whatever. And then was working on getting this silver bodysuit made with a star-faced mask, a bit like Electro from Spider-Man, but still sort of alluding to the old gimmick with the star sort of motif. And then sort of went into this more supervillain persona, the super heavyweight supervillain. And then we added the Commander when I got booked in Pittsburgh. And we did a gimmick, an angle where I, took over the company, the whole, evil commissioner thing.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we need a different name than that for a character like Sterling. So we went with Executive Commander, Executive Commander of Rise Pro Wrestling. And then I was like, well, Commander sounds great. So, Commander Sterling. And that's where we went from there. I eventually was working in Mississippi and Alabama, started doing some work in Pittsburgh, and had an opportunity to go work with Chikara. So I moved to Philadelphia. And then the pandemic hit, and then Chikara shut down a couple of weeks before I was supposed to debut with them. And then sort of floundered in Pennsylvania without any contacts or anything for a couple of years. Made a few inroads, did some work with a couple promotions, and then moved to the UK to be with my husband and got in touch with some UK promotions, North Wrestling being the first to really sort of bite off on me and see something in me. And then I debuted in February to a reaction I did not expect. And then that's where we are.
Yeah, I was going to say as a name again, who at that stage is very fresh, very new to Brit Rest. That must have been lovely to like get the reaction you got and be like, was that a bit of a whoa moment for you?
Oh, it was incredible. It's one of the most memorable moments of my entire life. I've been a career heel in the States. I was convinced that that's what I was. I love villains in media. I enjoy, I've got this sort of Joker laugh I do as the Commander. This I won't do it in full. This dog. And then just this evil, gloating, cowardly, bitch. But there was a lot of hype from sort of existing fans of mine, especially in the queer community, before I came to North, and we were like, yeah, there's no way I can go out there and be a heel. So we'll go out there and you know, see how we go with a more fan-friendly take on the Commander. And when I walked through that curtain and the crowd exploded, I mean, you can tell, if you look at the footage, you can tell where I drop character for a moment. Like, I play it off as much as I can in character, but you could see in my face, just, I am like, holy shit, where did this come from? Like, the roof was off the place, and as someone who was sort of struggling and worrying if they were getting over when they were in the States, to go from that sort of doubt and that worry to stepping out and unequivocally just being met with such a, like, it was the biggest reaction of the night. And you know, that was my first night there, and it was just, yeah, I was blown away. You know, I had things that I wanted to say in my opening promo, and I got them out, but before I started, I just sort of stammered, like, I guess I'll drop the heel shit.
I was going to say, is that like maybe a little bit tough as someone who's been, again, in wrestling, sort of like a career heel, but you have, like you say, this huge following in the LGBTQ plus community and in the gaming community as well. Is it then tough as someone, again, who's had that sort of heel run to come out, and as someone, again, who, like you say, sort of identifies with more of the villain, to then be like, oh, I've got to change things here, like, I've got to mix it up?
Yeah, it's hard to be a hero. It's hard to be a face. It's a different skill set, and one I'm learning. Like little things like playing more to the crowd in a match, and sort of communicating constantly, actually, with the audience to get them on side. So the heel, I only had to do that when actively antagonizing. As a face, you've got to constantly sort of keep them invested in you and sort of in your plight and struggles and triumphs. So that's something I'm learning. Is I have years of honing my character as the super heavyweight supervillain. Retaining that character, but presenting it in a sympathetic light is, you know, I'll admit it's something I am still learning. You know, I'm still getting to grips with it, but I could see myself getting very used to that kind of reaction. That kind of love is a little bit addictive.
Yeah, I imagine it's because obviously I know what it's like having been in like wrestling crowds when a pop like that goes up.
Yeah.
Like I imagine being on the other side of it is just that huge like endorphin rush.
Yeah, it's, and then the second show was even more. Like my friend and colleague Laura Kate Dale, who's a writer and a fellow podcaster, and that she brought a giant Commander Sterling sign that I did not know how huge it was. And people were holding it up, and she started a Yes Commander chant, and I was, and the reaction was bigger the second time, and I, again, just, that time I truly did just sort of pick up the mic and just went, fuck it. But yeah, it's been a blast. Right now, I don't see a villainous turn in the Commander's future just yet. Like,
sure.
And yeah, like one of the other positives of it is, you know, I have identified with villains a lot in media, but part of that carries with it a sort of there's a long-running problem in media of queer representation where they are always presented as villains. I think that's part of the reason why I identify with those characters, because they get the best Disney songs, and you know, they're often more flamboyant. You know, Mysterio from Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters. Just the showmanship and the pomp and circumstance of it all. I love that kind of stuff. But in the queer community, you know, we have this term queer-coded villain, which is, you know, how media portrays, you know, gay and bi and trans characters.
Mm.
So I always tried to present the commander as less a queer-coded villain and more a villain-coded queer.
Sure.
Which is a subtle distinction, but it's
an important one.
It helps, you know.
Yeah.
I tried to push the queer thing as sort of, if anything, the Kodama's. I'm literally looking at a Kodama. The commander's only redeeming trait, really. But yeah, seeing the amount of people in the LGBTQ community coming out to North, and you know, I've met these fans after shows, and they've said how much it means to them to see like a trans femme non-binary person up there performing and doing so well. Like it's meant so much to those fans, and it's another big reason why I certainly don't want to let this run that I'm on change because of how much meaning that's held for people.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is really important. And we've had a few members of the LGBTQ community on the show talking about the scene. As someone, I think probably the first we've had on the show who's wrestled both here and in America, I wonder if you can sort of delve into that in terms of, do you see how like maybe a sort of like, have you seen a change in how sort of like the LGBTQ plus community is treated in wrestling, both in the ring and with the fans, and is it sort of different in each country?
It's so far my experiences have been not necessarily different, but part of it is colored by my own personal interactions with the wrestling community. On an objective level, where I was performing in Pennsylvania, diversity and LGBTQ representation is starting to really explode. We have high-profile trans wrestlers like Edith Surreal. We have MV Young, this pansexual polyamorous rock star, essentially, who started hosting his own outlaw shows that I got to be a part of, the Polyam Cult Party. Enjoy Wrestling, which is a promotion I have a lot of fondness for and worked with in Pittsburgh. Their tagline is "Wrestling is for everyone," and they're incredibly committed to as diverse a representation as possible. So I've seen this come about, especially in the pandemic era, where a lot of opportunities, despite the lack of shows, there was a lot of opportunity to get seen online. And a lot of performers that weren't getting booked at places started to make their name because they just went straight for the online audience. They went straight for social media, using that lack of shows to get over. And during that period, like I said, we had the Polyam Cult Party, which became this sort of huge cult thing in the northeastern US wrestling scene. The UK, from what I've seen, and I only say this as someone who is just coming back to the country after a long time away, looks like it's only just starting. I've seen a drive for this year's Pride to be the year that queer wrestling in the UK takes off.
Obviously, like you say, as someone who's more newcomer to the Brit Rest scene, but we've had Brit Rest stars on talk about how it used to be the case where you'd get like one LGBTQ person on a show because that's like the token gesture. And now it seems like a few, like you're getting more and more each show, but it doesn't necessarily have to be about the fact that, oh, this is a member of the LGBTQ community. It's just a really great wrestler who happens to be in that community.
Yeah. I think projecting one's identity in a culture that is not only suppressing a lot of that identity in media and in culture, but in some cases is outright hostile. The UK is known colloquially as Turf Island because of the rampant transphobia that's in the media and the government, the tabloids, the BBC, and things like the government banning conversion therapy for gay people but wanting to keep it for trans people. For no reason other than cruelty. The so-called gender-critical ideology that gained a foothold here in the UK and has been exported to the States I think it's important that we have a spotlight on queer performers and celebrate those identities and those people. But also having them on shows, having folks like me, having just anyone LGBTQ on a show, showcasing themselves as a wrestler is equally important.
Yeah.
And it's striking that balance is it's not actually that hard. It's, you know, I when I'm out there as the commander, I don't what I do is not about who I am as a trans person, but, you know, in the huge list of titles that the commander has given themselves, you know, it's roped in there just to remind people that, you know, I am who I am because I'm proud of who I am. And it's also hard to get that across when I'm in a sort of genderless bodysuit with a mask on, and I can get because I didn't really I've never really altered my voice to sound more feminine when I perform. So, you know, I have people who don't look into my pronouns or you know, my gender have, you know, gone ahead and misgendered me, not always on purpose, but sometimes just looking at the character and assuming.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why I throw in this long list of titles, you know, the poly-antagonist, the pangalactic princess, the pansexual pandemonium, the super heavyweight super villain, the envy to envy, your they, them, trans, femme, paragon of non-binary finery. So I throw that in just to be like, you know, this is who I am, this is you know, how I live and how I present and what makes me happy. And then when that's done, it's time to choke slam some fucking Tories, you know?
Absolutely, exactly. No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
And that's great. And like you say, in terms of, again, something else you mentioned a little while back, I'm interested to know, in getting into wrestling, especially with, I guess, promo work and stuff, did your work, you know, in terms of your gaming and your YouTube and things like that, does that help, that ability to talk and be able to speak openly about, you know, either for or against certain things? Does that help you when you're starting wrestling, build that, not necessarily the character, but that ability to talk on the mic?
Absolutely. My show, the Jimquisition, originally was unscripted, and I would have a microphone in my hand and I would just rant. I would just yell and basically cut a promo on the video game industry because I criticise its sort of, you know, shoddy business practices and abuses of workers and talent and stuff. So that's what I did. It's more scripted and structured now, but I still improv the beginning and ending of each video. And for years before I got into wrestling, viewers would compare it to like pro wrestling promos and stuff, especially when I used to wear these aviator glasses and this suit. People would like make Jim Cornette comparisons. Not something I'd enjoy a comparison to these days. But,
no.
You know,
Few would, yeah.
Yeah, it was a very high compliment. And you know, it's not just that, but also like, you put yourself out there, especially in front of the gaming community, in front of the hardcore gamers who don't have a great rep. And I was never really over with them. The gaming community often had a love-hate relationship with me, veering heavily towards hate, especially when I would review video games and give them scores that they didn't like.
Yeah.
So being hated, as well as sort of essentially cutting promos and videos, definitely prepared me, certainly, for heel work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like I've been publicly speaking. I've been presenting and talking without a script for years. I've been making videos for 10 years. The Jimquisition is around 10 years old now, and I've done that week in, week out, consistently. Every Monday that show's gone up. So yeah, when someone puts a microphone in my hand, I can just talk. I was used in shows often when, if a wrestler was running late and a match had to be pushed back, like they would just throw a mic in my hand and say, "Sterling, get out there." And I would just go out there and do what needed to be done to keep the crowd entertained. So yeah, I consider myself, I'm very self-critical and I get down on myself a lot, but I do allow myself the arrogance of saying that I consider myself one of the best talkers in certainly the indie scene. And I believe that. I believe that. I believe if you give me a microphone, I will give you a fucking promo.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really good. And you know, as someone who's again not seen a huge amount of your work, but seen enough of it to know, like you are very good on the mic, and it's really good to see. And like it does seem like something else I wanted to sort of get onto was the fact that you sort of mentioned before about that sort of that you're hard on yourself in terms of sort of the level you're at or something, or are you doing enough, things like that. Do you see yourself now as sort of maybe being able to take a step back from it and look at it maybe as a third party to look back and be like, you know what, like things are going really well. Like, can you see you're making that progress and climbing that ladder now?
Most definitely, most definitely. I'm still very self-conscious. I'm still aware and not ashamed to admit that I am still very limited as a performer. I may have been in the business for close to 5 years, but I only started really fully training to be a more pure pro wrestler this year. But the progress I've made is phenomenal compared to where I was. My trainer, Liam Slater, who is just an incredible teacher, has just been so complimentary and so proud of the work I've done in such a short amount of time. That I'm very proud of what I've done. I started to really sort of believe in myself in December when I was still in the States. I had an I Quit match with Brandon Kay, sort of concluding the commissioner sort of run for Rise, and got to do some things I always wanted to do, like a face-first thumbtack spot, which a lot of people wouldn't find that cool, but it's my kind of thing. I'm not like into sort of deathmatchy stuff, but I like an inventively cruel spot.
Sure.
So I was really proud. Like I went to war in that match, and I was really proud of how it came out and the story we told, because that's what I'm into. Like, I always say I'm never going to give anyone a 5-star match, but I will tell a 5-star story. That's what I'm here for. I have never had the best match of any given night, but often I've had the hottest match. And that to me is what's important. So I'm really proud of the character projection I do, and now adding things to my repertoire, like, someone of my size and stature doing a spinning heel kick is something that, has thrilled me. Liam's gotten me doing things I never thought possible. Like I'm 38. Like I started training at 38. I have chronic pain. I get through every day on a mix of adrenaline and spite. But when I'm in that ring, it's different. That melts away. And Liam's gotten me, like, I never thought I could do so much as a forward roll, but now I'm in there like it's fucking Dark Souls, just rolling around all over the place. I managed a flip bump, and again, like I'm, 6'4", like, a very, big person. I lost a lot of weight after I came out and got happy with myself. I dropped like 100 pounds in a year, but, I'm still wide, and as I've taken HRT, like the tits have come out and the hips have come out. So like I'm big, but I'm just doing physical, just miniature feats of athleticism that I never thought I could do, and I'm feeling the improvement every week. Every time I'm in a ring, I leave it feeling better and more like I've just added to what I can do. And yeah, like, when it comes to mechanical wrestling, I do not have the widest repertoire, but I have enough to go out there and put on a performance that the crowd really gets into. And I don't think, honestly, I have many years as a wrestler. At my age, with the way my sort of body betrays me, I don't think I have I like to think I've got some years, plural, but I don't think I'm not going to have a 20-year career here. Not as a wrestler, at least. Going back to managing or commentary or something like that, I think I could easily transition into doing. But my plan is to make the most of the years I've got and get as good as I can. And I've gone from someone who convinced themselves they would never be a real pro wrestler to someone who's like, you know what? one day the North Championship's going to be mine.
Yeah. Oh, we'd love to see that.
And
That's
Newcastle will rejoice.
Oh, we need to see the Commander take on Rory Coyle, don't we?
I would love that. I would. Yeah, like just two different shades of mania there. Just lunacy. I would love that. I love Rory Coyle's whole persona and presence, you know. And I think, yeah, definitely, I think I could do some fun. Like, no, not necessarily, you know, I'm a bit childish about the idea of the title. Like, I don't know if I'll ever be good. But, you know, I'm at a point where I believe I could do some big things that I never thought possible. At the very least, challenge for it and lose.
Yeah,
which is still miles above anything I ever believed possible.
Yeah, which is still challenging for it, isn't it? You've still been put on that platform.
Yeah,
which is,
and I think I've got potential there. Like, I'm not there yet, but thanks to Liam and Pursue Pro Wrestling and North Wrestling having so much faith in me, and giving me the stage they've given me. I have a level of belief in my capability that I never thought possible. And for as many years as I've got, I am going to do everything I can to maximise that.
Yeah, well, that's amazing to hear. That really is. And let's shout out Liam as well, because you mentioned him there.
Oh, absolutely.
I think he's probably one of the most, even though he's absolutely elite, I still think he's one of the most underrated performers on the British wrestling scene at the moment.
Yes,
like, I think people talk about like the top guys, and like sometimes Liam's name is in there, but he should be always in there.
Oh, yeah, he should. Recycling, what are you doing out there? Sorry about the bottle noise.
It's fine.
They smashed a bottle the other day, and I trod on it, and it went through my foot, and the council still ain't gotten back to me about my complaint.
Ridiculous.
There is going to be a reckoning.
Send the commander down to the council.
My fury. Shit, where was it? Oh, yes, Liam Slater. Yeah, like an incredible talent. The stuff he's doing with Rory Coyle at North right now it's hard not to be invested in it. As a performer, as a personality. I mean, you know, people can talk about his wrestling ability all day long, rightfully so, but the man's charisma is off the charts. And that translates as a trainer as well as a performer. Part of the reason I attempt things that I never thought I could do is because when he talks to you with such a level of conviction and belief. He is excellent at getting you to do the things he believes you can do. He never makes you do anything. He just is so confident you can do it, or certainly so confident that you can try it, even if you can't do it, that you can at least try it and see. That, like, he puts you at ease, he makes you feel respected and believed in. And I owe that man so much. Like, in the months I've been working with him, I owe him so much. You know, he spoke to me after my UK in-ring debut, sort of my first match as a pro wrestler with Zio Knox. And just spoke about how proud he was, and you know, I got all weepy and everything, and yeah, he's incredibly underrated. He is, both as a wrestler and as a teacher, he is one of the best.
For sure, and that's lovely for you to say, and I'm sure he'll enjoy hearing that as well, and I'm sure loads of other people share that view, and we as fans do as well. There's a couple more things in terms of both your gaming and wrestling that we want to get into before we wrap up. The first is that in doing my research for this, and I watched a few of your videos previously, but in terms of I watched the recent one you did on Pokemon Arceus. That sort of like run through, which was great. I love that. I thought it was brilliant, and it just got me thinking, because we recently ran a feature with Ivy about her favourite Pokemon. Right. So I'm wondering if you also have like off the top of your head like a top 10 list
Ekans.
of Ekans. Oh, obviously Ekans. Yes, yeah. Is Ekans the whole top 10 though? Ekans,
Arbok. Ekans, all the way down Ekans. Yeah, like in my work in games media, like it's sort of a meme that I adore Ekans. Like I've been cracking on about that for like, God, however long I've been in games media now. Like,
yeah, I remember you being upset because it wasn't in Arceus, and I was like, that's weird. Why is Ekans not in that?
Huge controversy among my community. Where's Ekans?
Why
He demands.
Ekans seems like a really obvious one to put in just any Pokemon game.
Where did they hide my noodly boy? I had to make do with a shiny Wurmple because it's a bit purple and long.
That's not as good.
But yeah, Ekans is my favourite. I like purple. I like things like snakes. I think it's just a very cute snake. I love the purple and yellow, which is very non-binary pride sort of coloured as well, which is just a fun little bonus. I've got some other favourites. I like Lickitung.
Nice, yeah, classic.
It's adorable and weird. I like Chansey. She's adorable and weird. I like the pink squidgy ones.
Sure, yeah, they're sort of like cuddly ones.
Yeah, they're the cuddly ones. It's either cuddly ones or poison ones.
Sure.
Basically, they're the opposite ends. Yeah. I tend to like. So I like things like Toxic Crow and stuff like that. I like Haunter as well.
Yeah, love Haunter.
Yeah, like I know Gengar's sort of the final evolution and everything, but Haunter's design is this sort of jaggedy, sort of floaty ghost thing with these grabby hands, and that sort of big, sort of toothless grin. Like I really like that design. So as you can tell, a lot of pink.
There is a theme going here. Yeah.
But that's about the general region. I don't know if I've got like a top 10 I could rattle off the top of my head, but yeah.
No,
a lot of Ekans and then a lot of pink squidgy things.
Yeah, some good choices in there, I think. Excellent. And again, we'll end on a more positive note, but getting into something, I guess, a little more negative. Just because as someone, again, like yourself, who has experience in wrestling and gaming, I think both are probably sort of like niche audiences. Gaming probably a lot bigger than wrestling, especially indie wrestling. But obviously, in the last few years, we've seen a huge amount of, I guess, controversy and negativity and bad things going on about both the gaming and wrestling industries. My question to you would be, have you seen a change in either or both of those industries? How much do they need to change? And will they change, essentially, in your mind? Do you think change is possible, or has the damage been done too much?
See, this is where I'm going to get on my anti-capitalist soapbox for a bit, because, as much as there's been exposure and a lot of sort of hope that's come from people speaking out and talking about abuse, in wrestling, obviously, we have a lot of testimony of wrestlers who have been abusive. In the game industry, we have horrifying stories of company-wide abuse. I have friends and colleagues who have been victims of some of the abuse. The stories are horrific. I won't go into too many details, but they go up to and including assault and a company culture that moves managers and executives around the company when the complaints get too hot. It's terrible. I've argued that the game industry is rotten to the core. And unfortunately, a lot of that's not going to change because of the socioeconomic system we have, where companies and executives are incentivized to put profits above human well-being. The rot is so deep. And obviously we see that in wrestling as well. It's hard to mentally imagine the scope of how much money a single $1 billion is, let alone the multiple billions these men have. And in a capitalist system where money is everything, $1 billion is a functional god. They're the closest to a god we have because money unlocks so many things. It gives you unchallenged power. And without the ability to challenge that power, abuse will continue because these are the men that condone it. We've got the QA testers who are working on the upcoming Dragon Age 4. They're talking about unionization now. The past couple of years, there's been a groundswell of that, and I'm someone who's advocated for video game unionization for years. And I also advocate for it in wrestling as well, for at least the two big promotions in AEW and WWE. They need to unionize. The fact that a WWE wrestler, a television star, has no health insurance is disgusting. It is disgusting. It's sickening. The fact that I, doing my YouTube work and being supported on Patreon, earns more than some of these wrestlers is shocking to me. I like the money my business brings in, but I look at any wrestler, no matter where on the card they are, if they're performing on television day in and all touring around the country day in, day out, they should be earning more than they're earning. They should be earning more than me. And unfortunately, there's no way corporations do things out of the goodness of their hearts. My friend Conrad Zimmerman, who I also podcast with, reminds me of the old adage, regulations are written in blood. A company doesn't do something until someone gets hurt and people step in, like whether it be legislation or a regulatory board or a union. Corporations have to be dragged kicking and screaming to do anything other than nakedly profit, because that's all a corporation is designed to do, is profit at the expense of others. So they will never change, not without being forced to. And that's where I'm seeing some hope is with unionization. It won't fix everything, especially, with the amount of abuses we've seen in indie circles. Unionization isn't feasible in a lot of places in the indie scene. There's just no one big enough to carry that. But the newer crop of wrestlers, again, talking back to guys like MV Young, are also very vocal about better unionization, better representation, being open with other wrestlers about how much you're being paid, even on an indie show. There's long been that whole thing of don't discuss your pay, and wrestlers more and more are like, no, screw that. Be open about it, because that's how you be exploited, is when things happen in the dark. So at the very least, even though I do think there's a lot of screwed up, fundamentally by design elements of the system we all operate in that will always incentivize abuse, I am seeing mitigation of that, which gives me some hope.
Sure.
I don't think it'll ever truly go away, but I think more and more we can get ourselves into a position where we can better protect ourselves.
Sure. No, well said. Well said.
And the few years have taught us anything. We need to learn to protect ourselves from capitalism.
No, well said. Well said. And you're right. Yeah. Hopefully the industry can change. That's what we all hope, isn't it? It's what we all want, because it's industries that we love.
I mean, you should do. Like, you still get some people who call themselves fans pushing back on this stuff, and I don't know how. Like, if you love games or wrestling, respect the people who work on that stuff. Don't just stand for a company. Don't stand for WWE. Don't stand for Electronic Arts. They don't care about any of you. You're walking wallets to them. Stand for the people who actually produce the content for these companies.
Well said. Well said. Absolutely. And we'll end it now with something a bit more positive, something a bit lighter, because we've got one final feature here. It's called Anatomy of a Pro Wrestler. And this is a shoot now. This is about you. This isn't about the commander. These are questions sort of about you, so we can get to know you a bit better. So the first one is my favourite pre-show meal.
Pre-show meal. I have often tended not to eat before a show, mostly because I've got to be zipped up in a jumpsuit, and I don't want any risk of malfunction. But since moving back to the UK, there's almost always a Greggs on the way to anywhere you ever go. So, a cheeky little sausage roll will make me a very happy Stephanie.
Yeah. Classic, isn't it, a Greggs sausage roll? It's really good.
Absolutely. It was one of the first things I did when I came back to the UK to visit for the first time in like 14 years before I moved back fully. First thing I did was kiss my husband. Second thing I did was get a Greggs.
It's what you got to do, isn't it? It's what you got to do. I know it's a point of contention, but I genuinely believe, I think the vegan sausage roll at Greggs is better than the meat one. And that's coming as a meat eater,
I'll have to try it. My partner is vegan, and they get the vegan sausage roll.
I think it's really good. I think it's a lot better than a lot of other vegan products out there. Like, it really is. The next one, this is on the opposite end of the spectrum then, it's the your favourite post-pinfall pig out.
My first post pinfall pig out.
Yeah.
I love as someone who, is a fan of flowery language and purple prose, the alliteration on
Thanks.
that.
Yeah, I thought of that. I was like, I knew it's got to be post and it's got to be pig out. So what was that?
That's wonderful.
Cheers.
I don't really have any traditional meal. It's normally like, wrestling shows end late. It's whatever's open.
McDonald's or like a KFC or something,
Yeah. There is I can't remember the name, which is a shame, but at the last North show, and I think they're there every time, there is a truck outside that does pizza.
Yes, yeah, I know they've talked about it. Is it? I think it's Anarchy or something. Is it something like that? No, that's the name of the brewery, I think.
Yeah, the brewery is the Anarchy Brew Co. And I'm not sure what they're called.
No, they mentioned it. Yeah, I can't remember either, but we'll look it up. Yeah.
Try and remember and pick them up, because I think that might become it. Because I tried there, they had a lovely garlic bread, and I'm a bugger for garlic bread. Like, it's one of my favourite things. Can't get good garlic bread in the States. So you can't get a lot of good food in the States. Coming back to the UK has been terrible for my weight loss regimen.
Which is weird, because my partner's not American. She's Polish, but she really digs it, like on British food. She's like, British food is so bad, and I'm like, is it?
Yeah, like, people say that, but like, no.
I think British bad food is good. I think British bad food is good.
Yes.
Like, it's better than American bad food.
Oh, we do great junk food here. Yeah. And we don't fill everything with corn syrup. Like, I joke that the British food has been bad for my weight loss, but apparently I've managed to lose 15 pounds since moving back.
Oh, wow.
Even though I've not been trying, because I've been like reacquainting myself with things like knickknacks and skips and all the things I missed. Simply because there's not corn syrup in everything. I think just the lack of corn syrup has just let me still naturally lose some weight.
Yeah, because that puts it on, for sure.
Yeah, there's very few regulations as to what kind of shit can go in American food.
Oh, I've seen me and my partner watch this show. It's on Food Insider. It's called like Food Wars, and they like compare like fast food chains or whatever from here to America, and the amount of like extra stuff that's in American food that you don't have over here that like they say can like cause cancer and stuff. I'm like, why are they putting this in their food?
The biggest example I give is bread. Like, it's not just garlic bread. I just love bread of all kinds. Getting bread is one of my favourite things. I cannot eat American bread, just supermarket bread. It tastes like stale cake because they put corn syrup in it. You don't need corn syrup in a slice of bread. Like, coming back to the UK, just having a slice of bread with some butter on it is gourmet to me. Like, it's one of the most beautiful things on God's green earth. I love it. Just a bit of bread and butter. As someone who's had to spend 14 long years, the best I could get would be if I got fancy French bread from someone. And even then, coming back here, I'm like, I can get a good baguette for, like, you wait till like later in the afternoon, you can get a good baguette for 29p at the little Tesco, right? $5 for any decent,
ridiculous,
any decent French bread in the US, and even then, it's not a patch. So I got well off the topic.
No, I was going to say, this podcast is now going to be a straight hour of bread talk fully. No wrestling, just bread, pure bread. Well, you sort of pick up on it there, because the next one is my favourite food. Like, just generally, not post-match, not pre-match, just at any point, your favourite food.
Prawn mayo sandwich.
It's a good choice.
I'll do... The meal deal wasn't a thing when I left in 2008. Coming back,
revelation.
I can walk into a co-op, I can walk into a Tesco, I can walk into a Sainsbury's, and there will always be a prawn sandwich. Well, not always. They get snapped up like nobody's business around here. But if I'm lucky, there's always a prawn sandwich for Stephanie Sterling. There's something about a pre-packed sandwich as well. There's just something about it. Just pre-packed prawn mayo. Mwah. I love prawn anything. Prawn shrimp.
Prawns are great. Big. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you go. If you like prawns, this is a weird one, right? But if you're ever in Edinburgh, me and my partner went there a few months ago, and there's this place on this little like seaside town called Newhaven, like 15-minute bus ride from Edinburgh, And we got like these scampi here, and I've never seen scampi that aren't, like the little balls that are like this big, and you
Oh,
cut
I
it
love
open.
scampi.
But like this was like a full-on like king prawn as the scampi. Like it was mental. I've never seen scampi like it in my life.
New Haven.
New Haven, Scotland. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna locate this.
Yeah.
I am a bugger for scampi.
Oh,
Scampi again in the US, very different. It's a literally different meal.
is it?
It's prawn.
Oh yeah, it's pasta, isn't it?
Yeah, they call everything shrimp there.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's basically a prawn in like garlic butter sauce.
Yeah.
It is nice, but
it's
ain't
not scampi.
Scampi.
No.
I recently went to a Brewster's for the first time in 20 years the other week, and I'm like, right, scampi this bitch up.
Yes.
And yeah, oh god. Oh, I love scampi.
Love it. I should have started with this. We could have just done a whole food podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? This would have been brilliant. Well, unfortunately, we're off food next because it's the song that gets me the most hyped.
Song that gets me the most hyped. That can fluctuate and change. But currently, for quite some time, it's been "Thank God I'm Not You" by the Himalayas.
I don't know that.
Lyrically, it describes the heel commander to a T.
Does it?
It's about being a coward and a liar and a cheat, but still feeling you're better than someone else. If I didn't have just an absolute bop of an entrance theme that was actually written for the commander, it would be "Thank God I'm Not You." That would be my entrance music.
Nice. I'll have to look that up.
It's a jam.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll look it up. I'll look it up when we're done. Next one is again my favorite band of all time. Doesn't have to be a band. It can be like a solo singer or something. But like favorite music artist.
The Electric Light Orchestra.
Oh, it's a good choice.
Right? Oh, I'm all about ELO. It was the first band I really got into. It was the first time I really got into music. I found an old cassette tape of my mum's, which had a New World record recorded on it. Tightrope is my favourite song. The first track from that. Yeah, ELO.
Good choice. You're the first person to say that, and sort of first person to go that sort of era of music as well, which I like. That mixes things up.
I've got a very eclectic mix of musical tastes, but a little bit of 70s pop.
Love it. The next one is again final music one. The best gig I've ever been to.
Best gig I've ever been to. Probably Sparks. I went to see Sparks, who are most famous for "This Town Ain't Big Enough for Both of Us." It was their album "Hello Young Lovers," if I recall correctly. The first half was the full album of that, which they got a song called "Dick Around," which is just, it fucking rocks. And then the second half, they did a whole bunch of their hits like "This Town Ain't Big Enough for Both of Us" and "Happy Hunting Ground" and all of that. And they had the whole thing. Ron Mayle there with the little moustache with the keyboard and the staring and everything. It was wonderful.
Nice. Awesome. The next one is the movie that I'd show the locker room.
And the movie that I show the locker room, I don't think I can show those films. Movie that I show the locker room. I don't know. I guess I'll just default to my favourite film, which is "With Nail and I."
Okay, interesting.
It's just a very quotable comedy film about two drunk and drug-addled actors who go on holiday by mistake. Has no real plot to it, but it is. It's a very poignant film that I love. Either that or "The Greasy Strangler."
Nice. Yeah. Sure.
In fact, that's the one I'd show people. I showed my husband that one, and yeah. I don't know if they've fully forgiven me.
I'm not sure people would, no.
No. In fact, I might go down and remind them of it when I'm done here. I'll just go down and go, yeah, I can be greasy too.
Amazing. Brilliant. The next one is my favourite way to relax.
Favourite way to relax? Again, this is actually something that changes. It can be video games or it can be walking. Like, I'm a big fan of just going out for nice long walks. Right now, it's playing Vampire Survivors, which is a game on Steam. Because I recently got a Steam Deck, so I've just been obsessively playing this game. It is such a simple concept. You just walk around and your character automatically attacks, and you unlock things that add to those attacks. And enemies swarm and swarm until the whole screen is just enemies and these upgraded attacks you have just chewing through them. It's incredible. And it's £2.09.
Amazing.
Pence. £2, and I've done nothing but play it for days. The value is off the charts.
Getting
yeah,
your
that's my
money's
current
worth.
way to relax.
Yeah. Nice. The next one is my first job.
My first job. I guess my first long-term job was working in a call centre, which is about the only job I could get in the UK as a fat, inexperienced person, because there's a lot of bias there.
Yeah.
And being on the telephone where I could be kept out the way. Plus, I've got a fairly distinctive speaking voice that got me some good jobs doing speaking stuff. But yeah, my first job was working for a flower company. I won't name the name, but it had a name that was deliberately made to sound like Interflora.
Right.
But it was a husband and wife who had a couple of flower shops in London, and I was operating in a dingy little office above the flower shop, taking orders which we would fill by phoning local flower shops and getting them to fill the order. And all we were really doing was being the middle person.
The flower middleman.
Yeah, it was...
That is an odd business model.
Yeah. It was a horrible company. The pay was terrible. And I got myself fired because I realised I'd be better paid unemployed than working for them. So my sales numbers went down, and they sent the company email just saying, your numbers are down. And I sent one back that said, yeah, I don't anticipate them going up.
Amazing. That's a good way to get yourself fired. Yeah, I like that. The next one is my greatest fear.
My greatest fear? My greatest fear. My brain finally becoming shredded cheese.
Sure.
As someone with OCD and ADHD, and those two things do not play nice.
No, I can imagine.
My memory is busted. I've got no working memory and very poor memory for media, very poor memory for concentration and just remembering experiences. I describe my life experience sometimes as playing a platform game with those little bridges that sort of collapse and crumble as you run across them. Like, that's my memory.
Sure.
It really hit home when I went to visit my now husband for the first time. And when I went home, because we were long distance for a while, I went home and struggled to remember anything, and it broke my heart. Losing my memory is my biggest fear.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate you sharing that, because obviously that is a tough thing. And no, I appreciate that.
It's a scary thing.
Yeah.
I try and be open about it, because especially with ADHD being so misunderstood,
oh, for sure.
Certainly people among my audience who've heard me talk about it, have felt seen and get to realise that no, they're not broken, because that's always a big thing with ADHD. You can be called lazy. You can be called you're not paying attention and it's your fault and all of this kind of stuff. You're incompetent. And it's not true.
Yeah.
It's ADHD, and it is responsible for a lot more than just saying, oh, a shiny object. Like, it affects memory, it affects mood, it affects depression. So yeah, I try and be open about that kind of thing. And
that's great, and that's important as well. And I appreciate that. The next one is my favourite wrestling match ever.
Favourite wrestling match ever. Now, this is gonna... This is going to mark me as a charlatan, I think, because it's not some big technical classic. It's not like, from any of the beloved sort of darlings of the industry.
Sure.
But God help me. My favourite match is, I think it was WrestleMania 2002.
Okay.
Kane versus Big Show versus Raven for the hardcore title. It's one of the stupidest things I've ever watched. It is absurd, and I laugh when when the golf cart thing just careens into camera, it makes me laugh every time. It is just, it's my favorite because it's a reminder that as beautiful an art form as wrestling can be, it is also inherently ridiculous, and we don't have to take it seriously.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, like you say, it doesn't have to be a technical masterclass to be a great match. It can just be something that's the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen.
Yeah. So that's. But just to show a little bit of cred, I'll also say Edith Surreal versus Ziggy Haim.
Nice. Yeah.
I'll say that to the hair versus mask match they had at Enjoy Wrestling's Night Moves, which I had the pleasure of catching at least the tail end live because I was performing at the same show. And
amazing.
I got to see see them go through the two tables on the stage. It was a hell of a thing.
Yeah.
So I'll throw that one in as well, just to not be a complete blasphemer.
Amazing. Well, the next one is, of course, the obligatory My Dream Match.
Dream match. It might actually be myself versus Edith Surreal. Like, even before the Edith persona, when they were at Chikara, they were a big inspiration to myself coming out as a trans femme non-binary, and like seeing Edith's transition and just being this beautiful flourishing that they had. They were one of she was one of the biggest influences to me, coming out and having the confidence and the curiosity about myself after decades of burying that. I love her persona. I love her whole look and talent. And I was going to go to Chikara specifically to work with her. That was the plan we had, and it never happened, and we never got to meet, even though we were on the same shows together and in the same state. Like, never got to happen. But I hope one day.
Yeah, hopefully it will. Yeah, that would be a great match. We'd love to see that. That would be amazing.
Also, Kid Bandit.
Oh, we love Kid Bandit. Yeah.
People are hungry for Commander Sterling versus Kid Bandit.
Yeah. Well,
every time we interact, like, both our fan bases are like, do it now. Someone book it. And I think it's going to happen. It's just a matter of which promoter wants the money. Yeah,
well, that's what we need, isn't it? Because if anyone's watching, obviously, I think Bandit's over in October, isn't he? Aren't they? So, yeah, it's going to be incredible. Like, if we can get Bandit over to face you.
Absolutely. The protagonist versus the poly-antagonist.
Be incredible. That is money. North, if you're listening, just
do it.
Put a bit of money towards it. Just,
Get in there.
Set a fund aside.
Make some cash.
Amazing. Couple of final ones. The next one is my favourite place in the world.
Favourite place in the world? Oh, this is going to be soppy and sappy. But it's anywhere where Phoenix is. It's anywhere where my partner is.
Nice. That's fine. That's nice. That's
to
lovely.
be with them has just been so good for me. So.
No, that's lovely. That really is. I mean, Scotty Rourke said it was his bed, so really we're like, you know, and that's it's just as a valid answer, isn't it? Because bed is wonderful.
Yeah.
But no, that's lovely. That really is. And then the final one is my dream holiday destination.
Dream holiday destination. See, to me, the best holiday is just my bed. To call back to that. I don't know. I guess I'd like to visit. I'd like to visit China one day. I'm a big fan of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is a historical, romanticized novel, which one of my favorite games, Dynasty Warriors, is based on. That's what got me into reading the book and being really into that sort of that period of Chinese history. It would be nice to go to see some of those places where sort of famous battles took place and stuff. Yeah, that'd be cool. Nice. Awesome. Well, Commander Stephanie Sterling, thank you so much for coming on the Grapple Theory podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We always end each show with giving our guest a little bit of promo time. So while you're here in the UK, whether you go back to the US, you know, wherever you're wrestling,
If anyone wants to check you out on a show, why is the Commander going to steal the show?
The Commander's going to steal the show because the Commander is the envy to envy, is the poly antagonist, is the super heavyweight supervillain, is the they them trans femme paragon of non-binary finery, the pangalactic princess of pansexual pandemonium. They chokeslam people. They chokeslam fucking Tories. They are one of the best speakers in the business. They do a spinning heel kick and it's quite good. They are charisma personified. They have the best cape lining in the business. They have their own original theme tune, no copyright strikes for this bitch. They, well, I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but their tits look great in a silver jumpsuit.